Yo, welcome to the mic where the green dreams thrive. We're talking horticulture, how to keep it alive. From the roots to the bloom and the seeds in the ground. Stories from the
Hello
pros
and
making
welcome
the
to
green
So You Want to
what
Be
sounds. So
Vlogcast.
you wanna be
I'm Chris
green?
Savarese, an OG in the green industry for nearly 20 years. Now, if you're a content creator who's building an audience, sharing on topics about gardening and landscaping, and maybe you've asked yourself, where's this going? Or how the heck can I make a living out of this? Well, you're in the right place. We've got stories from experts who share how they did it and can help get you there. All right, welcome to another episode of So You Want to Be. I am thrilled to have my next guest on, Denise Schreiber. Why don't you tell us who you are and what you do for a living?
Uh, I am a retired greenhouse grower and horticulturist. Now I write and speak about gardening.
Awesome. Well, before we get started, let me set the tone for how I met Denise. I first it was my first meeting at going to a garden writer symposium, and we had a booth set up. I had a little digging pit that we made up so that we could, show off some new shovels. And Denise walks up to me, having never seen her talk to her before. She walks up to me, and the first thing she says to me is, "Can you put a body in there?" And I'm like, "What?" Like, I didn't even know how to respond to this. So that will preface, this whole conversation that we're going to have as to, Denise's personality. So with that said, let's go ahead and ask a question here about, tell us how you got started in horticulture and what really kind of got you interested in this.
I grew up gardening. Like from the time I was about 5 years old, I was in the garden. We lived with my grandmother. And so towards the end of the season, I would go grab a carrot out of the garden, leaves and all, wash it off with the garden hose, and I would sit there and just munch on it. To this day, I only eat raw carrots. I don't like cooked carrots because there's something about that sweetness of a fresh carrot.
Oh, I love that. So let's hear a little bit about your experience with school and like what was all that like? Where did you go to school? What was your experience?
So I've been to school a few times. So I originally went to Penn State for journalism, and I missed my boyfriend. So I changed to Point Park University here in Pittsburgh for journalism. And I was there for a couple of years. And then we had bought a house, and then my husband lost his job. So I couldn't afford the tuition anymore. So a few years went by, and then a friend of mine told me that our local community college was offering free tuition to anybody who had been laid off from 1980 up till 1988. And that's the time when the mills were shutting down, and there was the great exodus from Western Pennsylvania. So I went, they paid for everything, my books, you name it. And they offered it was either landscape architecture or floriculture. My stick people look like the missing link. So landscape architecture was not in my purview. So I signed up for the floriculture program, and I learned to grow, how you're supposed to grow. I actually ended up as the co-president of the horticulture club while I was there. I graduated, believe it or not, magna cum laude. And I didn't have to take a math class, that's why. And then a few years go by, I got the job at Allegheny County Parks, and I started off as a seasonal, which meant every 2 or 3 months you'd get laid off for a week, and then they bring you back. I liked that. After a certain point, if they don't lay you off, they have to make you a full-time employee. And they didn't lay me off, so I became a full-time employee. The director of the Parks Department, who really liked me and the fact that I had a background in horticulture, because at the time their greenhouse people were simply laborers. It says, you're going to do this. And they really didn't have any clue. And so I kind of changed things up. They were building some greenhouses in other parks, and he wanted me to be in charge of them. So I did that. And all of my friends pretty much locally have master's degrees in different things. And it's like, I know I'm as smart as them, So, well, I didn't get a master's degree. I went back to school in 2001 and went to Carlow University and got my BA in what they call liberal studies, liberal arts. They don't offer a horticulture program. Graduated cum laude on a pair of crutches because I had had major foot surgery. And the rest is kind of history. I ran the greenhouses for almost 30 years until I retired.
Wow, that's really interesting. So let me ask you this. Given today, like, I know that the horticulture industry itself and education, they're shutting down like a lot of the programs. Do you think that people get that same kind of education now? Because it sounds like you got a world-class education in horticulture. Is that even possible nowadays? Do you know?
It is at some colleges and universities. There's some that now call it plant science. So it kind of covers, horticulture, landscape architecture, design, contracting, all of that. They just kind of blend it all together. I think it is possible. I think because I love doing it so much, I would go to trade shows. I would read everything I could lay my hands on about it. Really, YouTube wasn't doing that much back then. And you can get a job. You can't bluff people. And, working for somebody, I think one of the big problems that a lot of garden center greenhouse growers have is they don't want to train somebody that expects to work 9 to 5, have weekends off, and as soon as they learn something, they're off to the next best thing, where they can make more money. So loyalty is a part of it. It's not all of it, but people need to, I don't want to say enjoy, put themselves in there. And if they want to learn, whether they want to learn how to grow cannabis, I'm sure pretty much they all want to smoke it, or chew gummies, as the case may be.
Big business now.
I know. You know what? However, only medicinal cannabis is legal in Pennsylvania. So I don't do talks on growing cannabis because they keep shooting it down and everybody goes over to Ohio to buy it. And at the same point, you want to know how to do things. I'm an All-America Selections trial judge, but in all these years, I have never done unrooted cuttings. It just never came up. I used to get plugs to trial, and the problem was some of them didn't make it through the mail very well. So they went to unrooted cuttings. This was the first time in all these years I've ever done it. And I had 99% grab them. I was like amazed. It's like they all took. And, so I took what I knew about doing seeds and doing cuttings. Now I have done cuttings, which is different than unrooted cuttings. And it was like, oh my God, it worked.
Horticulture is fascinating that way. Well, let's talk about that. And I do want to, before I move on to that next question, do you think that there's, how can I say this? I don't want to say you were fortunate. I mean, you put in the time, you put in the effort, you really did the studying, and you wound up with a good job. I'm assuming that it was a good, it paid some bills. I mean, you made some decent money out of it.
Paid some bills, not a lot of bills, but I will tell you that public horticulture, I walked away with a pension and good health care.
And exactly. So it's like, people, I think, there's this perception that you cannot make money in horticulture. And I really do hope that as the more people that I talk to on So You Want to Be, people start to realize that there are different opportunities. There's a lot of ways for you to have a job that you love and can make some money at it too. So let me ask you this. When you were working, it's like, what got you into the whole kind of the communication side of things?
So I want to say I think it was the year before I met you. There was a garden writers, as we used to be known, conference in Raleigh, North Carolina. And it was, a pretty big conference, walking around, passing I didn't even have real business cards then. I actually printed them up on the computer and on some cardstock and passed them out. And I got home, and like a couple of days later, I had an email from a woman by the name of Jean McWeeny, who I believe is a member, and asked me if I'd be interested in writing for a new magazine called Pennsylvania Gardener, part of the State by State Gardening umbrella. And my choice was hot plants, Ask the Expert, and I think a how-to or something. And it didn't pay a lot. Trust me, the Ask the Expert paid $90 for every column. That was every other month. And I said, oh, I'll do Ask the Expert, because she said it got good visibility. And it did. And the problem was, while I got good visibility, I think in the 5 years that I wrote for the magazine, I had 2 questions come in. Every other question in that column I made up. But it was.
I mean, yeah, you had to make up the questions that people were.
And the answer, and where they lived.
Well, you got to keep it fresh, I guess.
Yeah, but it worked out, because I took real life problems and made them the questions and then the answers. So it did work out.
Well, I mean, that's awesome. Now, I will tell our listeners here that, I've known Denise for quite some time, and she literally knows everybody in this industry. Like, I will say that if I ever need to try to find somebody who works in that business, or who do you know, I come to Denise first, because she literally knows everybody. That's a fantastic skill. I mean, like, how do you do that?
So my Aunt Margie, it was one of these people that she knew everybody, because Aunt Margie talked to everybody. I'm kind of the same way, us Pittsburgh people, we talk to everybody. You're standing, on the train platform, and you're like, you're waiting, and you start making a conversation like, I wish this was. So we talk to people, and I'm not afraid to talk to people. When I was little, my mother said I was so afraid of people, I would hide behind her. And then I'm not sure where that went. But I talk to people, and, there's times I will ask a question, maybe as an opening statement to get somebody to talk to me. There's other times when I need to know how this works, or what you're doing with it, and, those sort of things. So, but yeah, so I go to the trade shows. I go to MANTS, which is Mid-Atlantic Nursery Trade Show in Baltimore in January. Wish it was someplace else that was warmer. And then I go to Cultivate in Columbus. And I talk to these exhibitors, and I take videos of them too, and just post them on YouTube. And it gives me a rapport with them, because I've taken the time to actually talk to them, to, tell people about their business or their product or whatever it is, they're selling. And
okay, so you're touching on something that I've only done a few of these So You Want to Be session at, but a lot of people I've heard who are garden communicators, they say they're introverts. What would you say to these people who consider themselves to be introverts? They don't want to put themselves out there, but yet here you are, somebody who you go up and talk to people, you ask questions. Like, you have any advice for these people just to help them get to know people better?
one of the things I would suggest is a lot of community colleges have what they call the non-credit courses, and they usually have a speaking class, and they can learn how to talk and learn how to be at ease speaking to people. And most of those classes, are a few dollars. I took one when I was at Carlo, and they ask you have to do one. It's a memorial. One is a funny, and one is a lecture type. I don't like to lecture. I like to talk and interact with my audience. So, but you have to know how to do that, because someday somebody's going to ask me some really technical stuff, and I'm like, oh, okay. But I did one on my friend Mary Dale's, and she's from Elizabeth, Louisiana, but she was living here in Pittsburgh. And I talked about Mary and how she was a wonderful vocalist. She could quilt like nobody. She made her husband a leather coat. And I said, but we were sitting there talking to Mary one night, and we have a groundhog problem. And she said, oh, when I see them, I have relocated them to groundhog heaven. And I did her accent, and hand gestures are part of that. And everybody just loved it. So you don't have to, be funny. I've done, and most people don't know this, I've written 4 eulogies. I've given 3 of them. And even in the eulogies, I've had something funny in there. My girlfriend's father-in-law passed away suddenly, and nobody in the family nor his best friend could give the eulogy. So they asked me if I would give it. And I said, well, give me what you have. They said, oh, we don't have anything written. This is the night before the funeral. So I sat down with some of the family members, kind of got a couple of points. And one of the things was the brothers said when they were bad, their mother would send them down to the basement to wait for their father to come home. And he would tell the boys, okay, yelled loud in the scream, took off his belt and started beating the chair down there. He said, I want your mother to think I'm really hurting you. And so it was a light moment in the rest of the eulogy, but it was just something to put people at ease. So you always want to put people at ease as I'm sitting here with my hands going.
So these are perks of, you're a speaker, you're a writer, that people are just going to come to you naturally, which is actually my next question is like, you've kind of done it all. I mean, between writing a book, doing public speaking, and I mean, like, is there any, which aspect of this do you enjoy doing the most?
It's a toss up between writing and speaking. I love doing both. When I was in grade school, and I went to little Catholic school, and then Mom said to me, because again, I'm terrible in math, and she looked at me, she said, now, Denise, what do you want to be when you grow up? I said, I want to be a writer, because it just didn't seem like math was ever going to play into it. And, 40 years later, I actually ended up being one.
Wow. And was that your first, okay. So I'll tell our listeners here about your book, which is called Eat Your Roses. And I remember you sending that to me, and I was thinking, what kind of book is this? But I have to say that was my first introduction to edible flowers. Like I'd never done that before, but and I never thought I would be ever eating my roses. But how did you learn about that, and what made you write a book about that topic?
So, 2 friends and I went to England, and we rented a car and drove around England and Wales for 9 days. And there's always a place in the English gardens for a spot of tea in the afternoon. And so there's one place we went to, is called Montesfont Abbey. It's in Hampshire, and it's noted for its rose gardens. Anyhow, while they were eating scones or something and having tea, which I only drink when I'm really ill, I found rose petal ice cream in a container. And there was nobody to ask, how do you make this, whatever. And you eat the ice cream, and you ever smell something that says it smells good enough to eat? And that's the flavor of the rose was in the ice cream. So that scent, because, it's all the senses, your nose, your mouth, your tongue. And then when I came back, the county had asked me to start having some events. And I thought, oh, I'll do this, I'll have something about edible flowers. I put an ad in the paper. I figured I'd get maybe about 40 people that like to do that sort of thing. And I took a day off, and then it was the weekend. And when I came back, I had 200 people signed up. And we ran it for 14 years. Master gardeners were my volunteers. And so we made all these recipes. So we made lavender biscotti. We made rose petal ice cream, obviously. We did all things with, I can say it, with bee balm and lemon verbena and basil flowers and onion flowers, which you don't really think of. You think of the bulb. But the onion flower, if you let it go, you get this big, gorgeous flower, and you throw it into some hot pasta. Eastern redbud, which is a native plant. That's another one that's edible. Nasturtiums, people love that peppery flavor. So we used to do roasted red pepper soup with nasturtiums and a leaf on top of the soup and a little dollop of sour cream and then a nasturtium flower on top of it.
Yeah, and I have to tell you that when I read your book, I had grown some onions and they had gone to seed, and I actually had read that. I went out and I picked one of the little flowers off of there, and I ate it, and I was like, oh my God, that is the most intense sort of onion flavor. But I mean, it was really good. Wouldn't have known that if I didn't read your book. So,
and the other thing is a lot of people can't tolerate a raw onion, but you like the onion flavor, and there you go.
yeah, no, it was great. I mean, I learned a lot from you, just so you know that. Now, I have to ask you, so since you said that you were writing for, Pennsylvania Magazine, Gardener Magazine, and you came up with your own questions and answers sometime, did you eat all the flowers in your book?
Everything except nasturtiums. I ate a little bit of it. I'm not a peppery type person. I just don't. But I ate everything else.
Well, I did try the nasturtium flower, and I was just like, it actually was a little bit spicy. I was kind of shocked, but I think the interesting thing about that is it's not only tastes good, but it looks good. I mean, it really just, dresses up your food. So I appreciate that. All right. So let's see what else. Oh, I want you to be honest. What was the best and the worst tasting flower that you had in your book?
It's a toss up between the lavender and roses. Really, the nasturtiums would be it. And it's not the worst. It's just I don't care.
Enjoy it.
Yeah.
That makes sense. No, this is something that I heard. I don't know if it's accurate, but I heard that the sweeter the smelling, if the rose, the sweeter smelling it is, the better tasting it will be. Is that accurate?
Okay. So you're right. The more intense the fragrance of the flower, the better tasting it is. Daylilies are edible, but there's what they call the ditch lilies, the ones you see on the side of the road. They don't really have any flavor. And frankly, I don't want anything that's been on the side of the road. But now daylilies are breeding fragrance into them. So there's some fragrance there. Tulips have some fragrance. They're edible. People don't think about it. Daffodils are not. They are poisonous. So just in case anybody wonders, they are poisonous.
I was going to say, we should probably say to anybody who's listening to this, if you are going to try flowers, I highly recommend getting Denise's book so that you get the ones that are edible. I know that there's other ones out there, but do not try anything that is poisonous or that you should be eating.
I actually had a gentleman once tell me at the Edible Flowers Food Fest, he said, well, I figure if the deer eat it, I can eat it. I'm like, the deer eat tree bark. There's nothing in our diet that says that. But just because somebody on the internet says, oh, this is edible, I based everything in my book on university websites. So there was some backing there. And, you know, you should try a little bit. You might not like it. If you have some weird allergies, you might want to skip that and stick to like milk or something.
Something basic. So let's talk about now.
Oh, one other thing.
Yeah.
Just because if you have a headache, I hear this. If you have a headache, a stomach ache, oh, I drink chamomile tea, or I take, this herb for that. St. John's wort is a popular medicinal remedy. If you take certain medications, it interacts with it. And if you're about to have surgery, they give you a whole list of things that you have to stop before surgery. St. John's wort is one of them because it actually affects bleeding and can cause excessive bleeding. And so if you don't feel good, go to the doctor. I am not a doctor. I am not a chemist. I'm not a pharmacist. And I don't want to get sued.
Right. No, exactly. And I think that's very important for, horticultural communicators to just say, look, these are things that, you can certainly try, but yeah, you can't dispense advice, especially if you're not trained to do that. So, taking into account everything that you've done, everything that what, if somebody wanted to get to the same level of success that you did, what advice would you have for
them? Study and practice. I mean, I got to tell you, I can kill an African violet as fast as anybody, but at the same point, I can grow them. I know how to propagate them. I just can't keep them alive long enough. But you have to learn and look at sites and books that are from a university or, a reputable place. You don't want to take, there's a couple of websites that I won't mention on there, but they talk about, oh, you can do this, you can do that. And I just cringe, or they call them garden hacks. And then I'm just like, no, like the Dawn dish soap mess that people use and recommend because they think they're being organic and they're not.
That's really interesting. I mean, I think here's something that I would be interested to know. Do you think that horticulture experience, like knowledge, versus people who've done, like learned from actually getting out there and doing, is there a difference? Like, can you educate yourself based on the experience that you've had growing, or do you really need that horticultural knowledge in addition to your experience?
I think you do need at least some horticultural knowledge. I hear people tell me, oh, grandma used to just take a rose cutting, stick it in the ground and put a jar over it and it would root. Yeah, maybe back then, but now there's all kind of hybrids and the different types of roses. So that's really not the way to do it. At least investigate from several sources as to what you think you should be doing. I just hear people say, well, I'm just going to do this and see how it works. Taking garden soil and putting it in a house plant. And then, a couple weeks later, you've got all kind of critters running around your house that you didn't plan on.
Yep, absolutely. All right. There's a lot of younger minds that are, just developing out there. And I know you have a grandson and would be curious as to your thoughts. Is there a future for somebody like him or just anybody who's, young and has an interest in gardening? Do you think there's going to be opportunities for them in horticulture?
I think so. And you got to remember that horticulture kind of involves entomology. So insects, there is breeding involved that you're not going to learn from AI. That's very much a hands-on thing. And yeah, you'll see pictures of insects and I see them all the time. And it's like, that's not what it is. AI is not that great. And so I think that would involve them. My grandson, like, he doesn't like to dig. He's just like, I don't like this. He'd rather be on his tablet. However, every year we grow butterflies, and he's fascinated by them. And it's just one of those kits, and he puts his hand in there, and the butterflies get on his hand, and we take them outside to release them. And, he really likes that. One year I had some swallowtail caterpillars on my parsley. And every day he would come home from school and he would come out to see them, see how big they had gotten. One day he came home. Unfortunately, one of the birds had found the caterpillars and they were no more. And I just simply told him that they got to be butterflies soon and flew away. Because you can't tell a 7-year-old that the butterflies he was waiting for got eaten.
Oh, that's harsh.
Yeah. But
Oh, no,
it's a way for them to maybe become more interested in science. And there's soil science. Not for me. I found it pretty boring, but a lot of people are fascinated by it. A lot of people become geologists. That's kind of where they start. So there is that big umbrella.
Yeah. And I mean, I think, as people listen to this, it's like there are just a lot of opportunities within horticulture and sort of, outlying areas to explore that, it all intertwines, and it's just all part of the food web or whatever you want to call it. And it's just, it's out there, and it's like, I hope people explore those things. All right. Here's my last question for you, Denise. And I say this with the utmost respect, is how did you become Mrs. Know-It-All? Like, who gave you that title? Or, I mean, how does that work?
So way back when, I want to say maybe about 18 years ago or so, I had become friendly with Doug Oster, who's also a member, and he was pitching a radio show with Jessica Walliser. And anyhow, he said, I'd like you to kind of come on and not be the fun part, but I could, whatever Doug would say, it's like, well, maybe you should be doing this instead. And so when they sold the radio show to a.k.a, he's like, oh, I'm calling her Mrs. Know-It-All. And they're like, oh, we love it. So I am stuck with Mrs. Know-It-All. I was going for Garden Goddess, but that didn't happen.
I'd go with Mrs. Know-It-All, and that's a pretty good thing to be known for. So thank you so much, Denise. I appreciate that you come on. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. And if anybody's listening, can they still get your book? Like, where would they go to get your book? Or
Amazon. It is out of print.
It is.
So Amazon is the only place you can get it. You can, however, get it on Kindle, finally. So it is available on Kindle.
We will include the links, and then any place on social that they should go to if they want to connect with you.
There's my Mrs. Know-It-All page on Facebook. Hopefully tomorrow I meet with my computer guy, and we'll be doing the new website and getting that up and running. And it's going to be plantlikeapro.com.
That's easy to find. Well, Denise, as always, thank you so much. Thank you for taking the time. And I hope that you have inspired someone to either become a speaker, writer. Literally, you've done it all. So I appreciate your time here today.
Oh, this was fun.
If you found this episode inspiring and ready to take the next step in getting paid for your passion, the easiest way I've found to tap into those opportunities is getting started with GardenCom. As the executive director of this organization of professional communicators, I've watched many of our members get their first book deal during a Pitch the Editors meeting, or finding the right person in the industry that they needed to connect with, and being able to connect with brands who want to work with content creators just like you. So there's also online resources for how to get paid to speak and write about plants through the virtual learning on demand. And most importantly, over the years, I have heard many great success stories of members getting their big break when they come together with other creators at industry events such as the Gather and Grow Tour. So just go to gardencom.org or follow the links in this post to learn more about this group, how to become a member, and join us at in-person events. I hope you take the next step to get paid for your plant passion and look forward to seeing you at an upcoming event and connecting with you in the garden community.